What would you do if the person you loved most betrayed you in the most cruel way imaginable, leaving you helpless as danger closed in? The night was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of fire as Clara Bennett struggled against the iron lock that trapped her in the bedroom of her own home, her swollen belly pressing against her trembling hands as she banged desperately on the door, screaming for help, while outside the flames licked the walls with greedy hunger and her husband, Robert, stood frozen with a smug expression, thinking of the pleasure he had brought to his mistress by endangering his pregnant wife. Heat of betrayal burning hotter than the fire itself, every heartbeat pounding in Clara's ears as fear mixed with rage and despair, her mind racing through memories of the man she had once trusted, the vows he had sworn, the promises now turned into cruel mockery, while tears streamed down her face and smoke made her lungs ache. And yet in that darkest moment, she summoned a spark of instinctive courage, reaching for the small phone hidden beneath the nightstand, hopping against hope someone, anyone, would hear her cries, the fire crackling like a predator ready to consume everything she held dear. And as Robert's laughter echoed down the hall, convinced she was powerless, Clara's fingers finally found the buttons, dialing with trembling determination, her voice hoarse but defiant as she whispered to the operator the address and her desperate situation, the reality of betrayal and danger colliding in a moment that felt like eternity. And outside, neighbors began to notice the glow of flames through the windows, the scent of smoke cutting through the night air, while Clara pressed herself against the corner of the room, trying to shield herself and her unborn child, praying that the world had not forgotten justice, that someone would arrive before the fire took everything. And in that heart-stopping instant, she realized that even in the face of unimaginable betrayal, courage could be born from desperation, that hope could flare brighter than the flames surrounding her, and that the strength of a mother's love could challenge even the cruelest hearts. And as the sirens began to wail in the distance, Clara whispered through tears, "I will survive. I must survive." And in that moment, the battle for life, truth, and justice had begun, a battle that would expose secrets, punish the guilty, and redefine the meaning of loyalty and betrayal. Subscribe to follow Clara's fight for survival and justice, and comment, "Strength," if you believe no one should ever be left helpless in the hands of betrayal. Clara Bennett pressed herself tighter against the corner of the bedroom, the heat from the flames creeping closer with every passing second. Her breath ragged, heart pounding as the reality of her husband's betrayal sank deeper, knowing that every second she hesitated could cost her and her unborn child their lives. Yet she refused to give in to panic, focusing instead on the tiny spark of hope that had come through the phone call, the operator's calm voice promising help, dispatching the fire brigade, and giving her a thread to hold on to in the chaos. While Robert lingered in the hall, his smirk fading slightly as he realized that Clara had taken action, that her defiance was not something he could control with wealth, intimidation, or cruel satisfaction. The fire roaring louder as if echoing the anger and fear that filled the house, flames dancing along the walls, smoke curling around her like a dark cloak, choking, suffocating, yet Clara's resolve hardened, her fingers gripping the phone with determination. Whispering every detail she could, her mind racing through every possible escape, every object she could use, every weak point in the door, and in that moment she realized that survival demanded both cunning and courage, that even against someone she once loved, she could find the strength to fight back, that the betrayal itself had sparked a fire within her stronger than the one consuming the room, while outside, flashing lights approached, sirens wailing like angels of justice racing toward the scene. Neighbors watching in horror and disbelief, calling out, pointing, hopping, praying, and Clara felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of fear and clarity, knowing that if she could just hold on, just endure, she would emerge from the smoke with her child and her dignity intact, refusing to be a victim, refusing to let the cruel heart of a man define her fate. And as the fire brigade burst through the front door, axes ready, hoses spraying water into the inferno, Clara summoned the last ounce of courage, shouting with every breath, "I'm in here, help me." And at that precise moment, the first brave firefighter smashed through the bedroom window, pulling her from the clutches of heat and despair. And as she stumbled into fresh air, coughing, shaking, but alive, clutching her belly, tears streaming down her face, she realized that even in the face of ultimate betrayal, love for her child, instinctive courage, and the timely intervention of those who uphold justice could turn the tide. And Clara knew that this was only the beginning of a journey to confront the man who had sought to destroy them, to expose the treachery, and to ensure that no one would ever underestimate the power of a mother's love and unyielding spirit. Subscribe to follow Clara's journey for justice and comment, Survivor, if you believe courage can overcome even the darkest betrayal. Clara Bennett stood outside on the cool night air, her body trembling from smoke and adrenaline, clutching her swollen belly, while the fire brigade doused the last stubborn flames, steam rising like ghosts of the terror she had survived, and Robert Bennett stood back, panic finally replacing his earlier smugness, realizing too late that his cruel plan had failed, that his betrayal had been witnessed, and that justice was already in motion. For Clara's call had alerted not only the fire brigade, but also the police, and as officers approached, notebooks in hand, Robert's excuses faltered, his arrogance stripped away by the undeniable evidence of his intent and the heroic survival of his wife, while Clara's eyes burned with a mixture of fury and relief, knowing that she had outwitted a man who had thought her helpless, that she had protected the life of her unborn child through sheer willpower and courage, that the world had witnessed the consequences of cruelty and betrayal firsthand, and as the neighbors gathered, whispers of disbelief and admiration rippled through the street, every person realizing that the quiet strength of a woman who refuses to be a victim could rival any act of malicious power. And Clara, still gasping from the smoke, raised her head high, speaking calmly but firmly to the authorities, recounting every detail, every malicious intent, every moment that had brought them to the edge of death. And as Robert tried to mutter defenses, the police handcuffs clicked around his wrists, a sound heavier than any flame, heavier than any threat, heavier than the weight of betrayal he had carried for too long, while Clara, supported by paramedics, felt a fierce pride in her chest, knowing that survival was only the first victory, that exposing the truth was the next, and that her courage, her clarity, and her refusal to be silenced would ensure that justice was not only done but witnessed. That no man could manipulate fear to his favor again, and in that moment, as she breathed in the night air, eyes glistening with tears of relief and strength, Clara realized that even in the deepest darkness, love, instinct, and unwavering resolve could light a path to safety, to justice, and to the beginning of a life reclaimed from betrayal, and she whispered to herself, "I survived. We survived." And justice will follow, a promise that would guide her in the days ahead, a promise that would turn fear into power and despair into hope. And she knew that her story was not only her own but a warning, a lesson, a testament to the strength that lies in courage, vigilance, and the refusal to let cruelty prevail. Subscribe to follow Clara's fight for truth and justice, and comment, "Justice," if you believe courage and love can overcome even the most unimaginable betrayal. Clara Bennett stood in the police station, the hum of fluorescent lights above her head matching the rapid beating of her heart, as officers and detectives took notes, filed reports, and reviewed the footage from neighbors' cameras, every detail meticulously recorded to ensure that Robert Bennett would face the full weight of the law, while her swollen belly reminded her that the life she carried had survived the ultimate test of cruelty, and that her instinct, courage, and quick thinking had turned near tragedy into a story of resilience, as she recounted every horrifying moment with clarity, every lie and betrayal exposed, every malicious intent laid bare, her voice steady though tinged with the tremor of lingering fear, and the officers nodded, impressed not only by the evidence, but by the sheer strength she displayed, a strength that could not be intimidated, silenced, or broken, while Robert sat across the room, handcuffed, eyes darting nervously, his earlier arrogance replaced by shame and fear, realizing fully that the consequences of his actions were unavoidable, that every plan to harm, manipulate, and betray had been undone by a woman who refused to be powerless. And as Clara watched him, a wave of calm satisfaction washed over her, knowing that justice was not only imminent but inevitable, that the law had recognized the truth, that her bravery had transformed fear into action and deception into exposure. And outside, news of the fire, the betrayal, and Clara's heroic survival spread through the neighborhood and beyond, whispers of admiration replacing judgment, lessons in courage and resilience reaching ears that needed to hear them, while Clara, supported by paramedics and family, allowed herself a long, deep breath, tears flowing freely not from trauma but from triumph, and she reflected on the life she had reclaimed, the child she had protected, the world she had reminded that even in the darkest moments, integrity, love, and courage shine brightest, and she realized that the betrayal she had suffered had not broken her. It had strengthened her resolve to fight for truth, to protect those who cannot defend themselves, and to show that evil cannot thrive when met with unwavering spirit, while Robert's arrest was the final seal on a chapter of cruelty undone, a reminder that justice may take courage to summon but cannot be denied when truth stands firm. And Clara whispered almost to herself, "We survived, and we will thrive," a declaration that resonated far beyond that night, a promise that courage, vigilance, and love always prevail. And as she looked at the first responders, neighbors, and officers who had stood by her, she added aloud, "Remember this, never underestimate the power of love and determination, and never let cruelty go unchallenged." Subscribe to follow Clara's journey beyond survival and comment, "Victory," if you believe courage and love can overcome betrayal, teaching us all that even the darkest acts can be defeated by steadfast bravery and unwavering heart.